Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, welcome back to the show. Cam Taylor joining us today, our grief coach. The Good Grief Journey is the name of the company, and he's joining us today live from British Columbia, Canada, and back to talk more about the work he does in supporting those undergoing grief. And grief comes in many forms. We learned that last week, and he's really trying to help you discover how to live your life again. So, Cam, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back again.
Well, same here. To have you back on the show, and for those that may have missed last week, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yes, I live on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia. I have 2 adult children and my wife, Jean, and I haven't talked about that part of my grief journey. I was remarried about 1.5 years ago, and so I'm in that part of my journey, and I love helping people. That's what I get up in the morning to do, to support people regardless of what they're going through or challenged with. I really enjoy that.
Beautiful. Well, we're excited that you're back here today to talk more about the work you're doing and how you're helping so many. And specifically, I know today we want to kind of start off by talking about the fact, you're not alone when it comes to grief, right? And could you share a little bit about that to people?
Yeah, I really wanted to just kick this off by saying, if you are a person who has had a loss recently, or even a loss that you've had even months ago, but you feel like you're the only one that is wrestling with so many different reactions, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in your thoughts, in your behaviors, I want to say to you, and as I've said to so many people that I know are in the same boat, you are not alone. When you think that you're going crazy, when you think that the reactions you're having, whether it's heart palpitations, foggy brain, can't concentrate, want to leave the room as soon as you enter it with a crowd, if you feel like I'm the only one I think that feels this way after my loss, you are not alone. And there are so many different reactions that we have. And I want you to be able to just take a deep breath and recognize that whatever it is you're going through, that is normal for you. And it's normal for so many people. So I know that that's often what I needed to hear when I was grieving. That I learned fairly quickly once I found some people that knew a little bit more about this than I did, that I wasn't the only one going through what I was going through. And that's the same for any of you that might be grieving today.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And there's so many people out there also. Let's, talk about what grief is. And there's some misconceptions that you wanted to get to as well.
Yeah, one misconception I want to talk about today is this whole idea that grief happens in some type of an orderly, linear fashion. And one of the theories that's out there, which actually has been misunderstood, very misunderstood compared to what the authors meant, is the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, that whole model. And that's very popular out there. But it's interesting that they never intended for that particular grief model to be linear, to be, denial happens first and then you move to these other 4 stages. They also, like what I believe, intended for that to be more, these are some of the realities you may experience during grief. And they don't necessarily happen in a particular order, nor do they happen, all of them, for everybody. For example, for myself, I can't honestly say that I was extremely angry after my wife passed away in 2020 from kidney cancer. Yes, for a while I was angry at the cancer, for sure, but I fairly quickly was able to reconcile that with how I wanted to show up. But going back to these stages, a better way that I like to describe it is there are certain elements that will be true for so many different people. But I want to talk a little bit more about my good grief model, which I think gives a different way to approach your grief and travel through your grief. So why don't I jump in with that? So good grief journey, GOOD. And again, this is not necessarily in an order, But what I found to be, these are the elements that you need. G stands for go down into your grief. As soon as we have losses, that's when the most intense time of grieving happens. That's when a lot of these reactions are happening. So it's so important for you to allow that grief to come into your house.
Okay.
Because when grief wants your attention, you need to give it that attention. Because if you don't, if you push it off, it will come back later in ways that you never anticipated, nor did you want. So go down into your grief. And then the first O in good is open up to new ideas and people. I learned that very quickly, that I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to grieve. So I realized fairly quickly, I need some new ideas so that I can actually start to think about this differently, perceive it differently, pick a different perspective on what I was going through. And I also needed people, in particular, empathetic people, to help me. So go down into your grief, open up to new ideas and people. The second O is orient your life with resiliency. And I want to come back to that today in this podcast, because resiliency is a key element, a key muscle that I learned to strengthen, and I want to encourage you as well. And then the D, and eventually you get to this, I got to this, it's discover how to live again. And there are some specific strategies, things like learning to move from that survivor to that thriver. What does that look like? And there are some specific ways you can actually shift that when you're ready. And to find a new purpose and to find a new identity after your identity's been hijacked or destroyed by your loss. So that, to me, is more a better representation of how grief actually can go. It's not linear. It's not in a straight line. It sort of comes and goes in waves. And then over time, the intensity does definitely lessen.
Interesting. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And if you are tuning in, just letting you know, we're here with our grief coach, Cam Taylor, joining us today. And we're learning, that resiliency, really can help dealing with loss. And there's so much that you can face. Maybe you're not aware, maybe you're not in it now to understand, but guess what? You will overcome, like all of us have. And some people just need that extra guidance, including myself at times, and vice versa. And so don't be afraid, open up, and we're going to talk more about resiliency. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me talk about resiliency. And this was a huge light bulb moment. And one of the first books I read after my wife passed away was a book called Resilient Grief. A friend of mine actually gave me the book, and I thought, okay, why not? If he found it helpful, I'll read it. And that's often the case for me. If somebody says, here, read this or look at this, I'll take them up on that. But this book, the huge light bulb for me was, when you have a loss, sometimes it feels like you now are the victim of these circumstances that are outside your control. I mean, isn't that so much the case? And that's true with so many parts of our lives, that when there's trauma and accidents and incidents and losses, it's very easy for us to all of a sudden say, oh man, poor me. And I think there's a place for that. But what I recognized, and at the time I didn't even know it, is that I thought I needed to allow this grief just to kind of roll over me. And that all I could do with grief is to be passive. A passive journeyer on whatever was going to come down the pike. It was going to hit me next. But what I realized as I started to learn about resilient grieving is that no, you don't need to be a bystander, somebody who is simply taking whatever comes. You can actually step into this journey. You can be a participant in it. You can actually, you have some agency in what is actually going on in your life. One of the one philosophy that I've learned so much from is Stoic philosophy, and an author, Ryan Holiday, has taught me a lot about this. He's a current day philosopher, Stoic philosopher, and he said this. He said, "What happens is what happens." That's hard to take sometimes. You have a loss, to be able to say, This has happened, and this is what happens in life. There's illness, there's accidents. This is the rest of that quote. He says, what matters is what we're able to make of it. And I think as I learned this and as I applied this whole idea of I'm not a victim of my circumstances, and I'm not going to let them dictate how I'm going to stay as a person. I am actually going to choose to be resilient in my circumstances. Things like tempered optimism. So not pure optimism. Pure optimism will get you nowhere. It will, where you say, it's going to get better, or I'm going to get over this, and 2 months go by and it's even worse. Then you get discouraged and you quit. Well, tempered optimism is, I believe that things will get better, but I have a way to cope with the daily drudgery and the hardness of life. That's resiliency. Resiliency is also things like finding models, people who have lived resilient lives that you can actually learn from, that you can pattern your life after. I'm a huge believer in that. I've got so many different mentors. For example, Nelson Mandela, he was one of my mentors. He's passed away several years ago now, but his life, those years in prison, the way that he overcame his bitterness, his resentment to those guards and to the whole system, inspired me to say, if he could do it, then I could do it. I love this quote of Nelson Mandela. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and I got back up. That's resiliency. Resiliency is bouncing back after a setback. But I think it goes one step further. It's also learning to bounce forward. Because what if there's no back to go to? And with losses, that's the case. I had no back to go to. I needed to bounce forward, and resiliency helped me to do that. One more resiliency muscle is build for yourself a supportive community. Those that isolate themselves when they're grieving are definitely not going to make the same progress compared to those who find empathetic, supportive friends who can travel with them. And it really addresses this idea of grief is the internal processing, which we need to do. But community is all about learning to mourn, learning to tell the story, learning to express outwardly what's going on inside. Community is part of your resiliency muscle group that we need to grieve well, to grieve thoroughly, to be able to eventually discover how to live again.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And what else did you want to continue with for today? Again, our listeners here joining you, and glad to have you back here to talk about this, because so many people could be using some help. And especially around the holidays, I feel like grief is just overwhelming. It's a lot more around the holidays, right?
Yeah, and I think the next times we talk, I want to touch more about the holidays, but I want to take a little different angle here, because I also help those people and support the people that are supporting grieving people. And I'd like to just provide some words, some encouragement, some support for those of you that may be struggling to know, how do I show up for my loved one, for my friend, for my family member, for my coworker who has just had a loss, and you just feel like you don't know what to say. And sometimes what we'll do when we're faced with the grief, the loss of others, is we'll just pull away because we don't want to say the wrong thing. Well, that's often the wrong way to go. And so I want to give you a way to think about this that hopefully you'll find helpful. And this material is developed by Alan Wolfelt, who is one of the experts that I've looked to as I've learned. But he talks about these 11 tenets. I won't talk. It's a long list. I'll just give you a few of them. But 11 tenets of what he calls companioning. And that's a word, I think he came up with that word. I mean, and companion, we know. A companion is someone who walks alongside of somebody else. You know, my best friend is a companion, and we all have these companions. Companioning is a term that is applied to the grief journey and to the support that we can give to people that are grieving. So I'll give you a sampling of some of the tenets that he suggests. And one thing that is so important, let me just start with the first one, is being a companion or companioning somebody who's grieving is to be present to another person's pain. That's what that looks like. It's not, oh my goodness, I can't handle this and walking away or changing the subject. No, that's an empathy blocker is what that is. Companioning is where you can just sit there and say, tell me about the person you lost. What do you remember about them? And they share their pain, and they maybe shed some tears, and you're learning in your companioning to sit with that, to become comfortable with that, because that is their reality. And that's also you supporting them in that. Companioning is also the phrase that's used, it's going into the wilderness of the soul. A person who's grieving feels like they're in this wilderness, they're in this desert, and they need someone to come out into the desert and to be with them in that wilderness. And that brings so much strength, so much encouragement. And you don't even have to say anything. It's just showing up and being present and walking alongside of them. It's listening with the heart. And that's a distinction between when you're companioning, you're not listening with your brain and hoping you can come up with the next right thing to say. It's listening with your heart, feeling what they're feeling. That's empathy, is connecting to the emotions of the other person. Learning things like companioning is about learning to be still. And this is a challenge for those of us that just go, busy, 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 always need to be doing something. Companioning is not that. It is learning to be still. Learning to match your intensity with the intensity of the person you're companioning and walking alongside of. And this one more point I'll make about this, and this is huge. This whole idea of taking on this learning posture and learning from that other person. When you're companioning, you don't have the answers. And I think we need to let ourselves kind of off that hook. You don't have to have the right words to say. You don't have to have advice. And actually giving advice is the wrong direction to go with a grieving person. Yeah. They don't want your advice.
Yeah.
Often it's a turnoff, right? They just want you to listen and to learn and be curious about what they're experiencing. So my encouragement to you, if you're learning, figuring out how can you be a friend to someone that's grieving, take some of these companioning tenets and put them into practice and learn how to be that kind of person. It'll change your life, never mind the impact you're going to have on other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true and so emotionally charged and empowering. Clearly, companioning is amazing. If we can, talk a little more, about this, because it's, I like it. You got to support someone, and there's a lot of ways you could do so. And, I want to know how we can find empathetic witnesses to walk with you, or how can you become that person for someone else, Cam? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, this was a big learning for me, and I learned this from Seneca, who is a Stoic philosopher from many, many years ago. And, he talked about, there was a lady that he was trying to help. I think her name was Maria, and she had lost her son, but she wouldn't actually talk about it. And he said to her, you're really stuck because you can't actually name your son and allow others to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And I really drew this lesson of, to attract empathetic people to us, if we're grieving, we need to be open. Now, what I learned, you don't just open yourself up to anybody. Like, you need to sort of test the waters a bit. I remember one time I was out for a bike ride and I was riding along and another guy was riding there and I was sort of testing the waters a bit here, but we get chatting and he said, "Yo, yeah, you're nice day for a bike ride." And I said, "Yeah, usually it's my wife and I on our tandem bike, but she just passed away, a couple weeks ago, and I'm out here riding my bike now."
Yeah.
And instantly, this was like I was kind of putting feelers out. Is this person going to give me a little bit of empathy right now? Because I need it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he asked me about it and said, "Oh, sorry for your loss." And we kind of rode together for a little while, and he offered some encouragement. And then he went on his way, and I felt like that load just ever so slightly was lifted. So the lesson in that for the grieving person is let people know. Tell your story in little bite-sized pieces. And if you find someone that's listening, they're showing some support, they're not sort of changing the subject.
Yeah.
Tell them a little bit more. And find those people, and they can be strangers, they can be people that you already know. And the people that aren't that way, just kind of let them go. Don't like boot them out of your life if they're a part of your life, but just don't try too hard if they're not willing to reciprocate.
Yeah.
Find the people that will provide you that space, that they'll be those companions for that maybe short period of time, and that ever so slightly lifts that burden that you're feeling.
Sure does. Sure does. Thank you. Thank you. And we got a few more minutes left here to sum everything up. What else, Cam?
Well, I think what I'm really noticing as I've been down this road for some time, and the one thing that's sort of coming to mind is that it's 5.5 years since my wife passed away on May 14th, 2020. And one of the things that we just had her birthday, November 11th, which is Remembrance Day. And I spent the day with my daughter. We went out for lunch. We went for a walk. We took our dog Max along, who my daughter, loves, because that was my wife's dog. And we just had a delightful day of being together. And we're both on a very different journey as far as our grief goes. And I just felt so alive when I could spend time with someone that I know is still feeling the loss of her mom. And I would say that, to be able to continue to be aware that everybody's on their journey, and some people are, at a very different place than maybe they were, and they've grieved very thoroughly, but others might be more stuck. And we just need to have that sensitivity to show up, be supportive, be empathetic. I remind myself on a regular basis that I want to be the kind of person that anybody could open up to and find that safe person to tell their story to. And I don't want anything to get in the way of that. Because when I get to the end of my life, I want to be able to look back and say, I was so incredibly supported by so many wonderful people. And I was able to leave a legacy and leave a lasting impression in the lives of others. And that's really what I want to do. I want to do that for anybody listening today or watching this. I want to be that person that can give you some encouragement, tell you that not necessarily it's going to be okay, because that's not always the words we need to hear, but that you will get through what you're going through. And there is help and support available for you.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And to feel good again, and to get out there, and to live your best life. And I love that you are here again today, Cam, supporting so many people. And again, if you are tuning in the Good Grief Journey, it's interesting, maybe you're, grieving a loss of job, a loss of people in your life, loss of habits, loss of a person, obviously, loss of a home, there's just a lot. There's also, I know, a PDF that he gives you 50 ways to grieve your losses when you do sign up with him for free. And at this time, I'm going to ask everyone for you to tell them how we can contact you and talk about your 7-day grief companion course, and also all the other forms of coaching, in a sense, that you can help someone with. And
Good Grief Journey, all one
book.
word, goodgriefjourney.com. And there are a few ways. There's 50 ways to grieve your losses, a PDF. You can check out my book, Unlocking the Mystery of Grief, which really talks about this good grief journey in more detail. And I've written it to be a very practical guide that can help you. It's like taking a mentor with you on your journey and a coach. And I want to be that for you. As well as for you to reach out if you want to do a phone call or a Zoom meeting, just to kind of tell me a bit of your story. I'd love that opportunity to see if maybe it's a way that we could work together and you could get some support in that way. So that's how you can reach me. I look forward to hearing from you and providing that support.
Beautiful. Thank you again. And pick up Unlocking the Mystery of Grief, How to Grieve Well and Learn to Live Again After Loss. Of course, that's your book. Check it out on Amazon. You have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for inspiring us here today and helping so many, Cam. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.